Hello, I'm Jonasz Lewicki and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Europe is facing a major challenge as Trump urges more defense spending and a fragile Ukraine peace beckons. It needs to free up more funds for tanks and shells, bucking the trend that saw Western Europe descend into a hopeless spiral of disarmament and complacency. To re-emerge from this trap, the European Union is now about to exempt defense spending from stringent budget constraints. But why couldn't it happen before? And crucially, how can Poland, which pushed for the changes to be implemented, actually benefit from the emerging shift in economic mentality? Joining us now is Paweł Wojciechowski, former Polish finance minister. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, nice to be here.
So first of all, let's explain the entire procedure that we're talking about. The excessive spending constraints. Why do they exist? And why do you think it was so difficult to actually ensure that defense spending would be exempt from them?
Naturally, there's no clause to limit the defense spending, just the opposite in the European fiscal rules. But of course, we need to spend much more. I mean, generally, collectively spending, 27 EU member states spend around 2% GDP on defense. Poland, of course, is a leader, but we spent around over 300 billion last year, and before the Russian aggression on Ukraine, the EU spent about 200 billion euro. So before the full-scale attack on Ukraine. So in fact, we need to spend much more now because of discussion geopolitics. The bigger role of Europe. We need to invest around 500 billion euro in the coming 7-8 years in order to support Ukraine against aggression and support themselves. So in fact, we have some clause in the European fiscal rules that allow to account for incremental investment, spending on investments, but not. The question is what are those investments? Okay, so this is the discussion that took place now. After Ursula von der Leyen said that we would have a special emerging escape clause, from those on the defense investment. So the question is what really it is, because so for example, there's discussion. The investments are, for example, definitely purchases of arms, tanks, as you mentioned, but the question whether that would cover, for example, military staffing and equipment maintenance, because if you buy a tank, for example, 20% is the value of tank, but if you add the munition and the maintenance and military, that is another 80% of the value. So you need to spend much more on the maintenance as well. So the question is first discussion that has to be tackled is what are defense investment, and second question is would it be allowed to have a escape clause, so-called, to exempt the military spendings from the budget deficit limits, which are so you to call it the so-called golden rules. Golden rule that is the main component of to have the excessive debt procedure, for example, on many European countries now. So this is an idea that was flattered in Munich during the Munich conference. Now we discussed this. Everybody is discussing this in Paris and other places. And there is signs that could be done. And there's another ideas, how to finance spending, for example, by creating special funds or even special bank. So there's several concepts we can discuss.
What do you think are the main issues here? Is it about the availability of the funds, or is it about implementing the spending programs, for example, the ability also of the arms industry to actually absorb these funds and to increase its capacity? Where do you think we might be facing the biggest bottlenecks, in other words?
Well, that's a very good question, because major bottlenecks are really in the preparedness of the European industry to deliver that much of arms. Today, for example, munition. Of course, there is some. Rheinmetall was able to produce more, but generally it's a very difficult setup because the European industry is not consolidated; it's very fragmented. There's a question of interoperability among systems, and there is a need for consolidation both on the demand, which is common purchases, and on the supply side. So definitely, if you want to look for arms, in Poland had a problem. We want to say, well, we want to invest for modernization of Polish forest military in the Polish, Polish defense industry. But actually, we invested maybe 17% of that. Most of it went to the United States, which is a dominant seller of armaments, and to Korea. And it's not easy to say, well, let's do the major purchases and procurement in Europe for the type of size of scaling up this type of investments. So in fact, we are thinking about it's all about the money. Of course, we need to first of all find create a so-called more fiscal space by using this escape rule. Second of all, maybe there's a mention about the idea to create a special bank or special purpose vehicle, like the one, for example, EBRD or European Stability Mechanism. So maybe other countries could join, like Britain and Norway, and maybe Ukraine as well. So money, I think, is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the preparedness of the industry to absorb the procurement, the orders that would come from that type of common purchases, in the future.
And would you say that we also perhaps need to create a great uncertainty on the market to allow the companies to invest in greater manufacturing capabilities? After all, one might assume that if there is demand, companies are going to invest. But this is a sector that, unlike the private sector, it needs some additional assurances, I assume. Otherwise, you might invest a lot and then find yourself in a situation whereby, for example, the demand changes or a different type of product is required by the military at the given time, and so you actually have a huge investment in production lines which then might actually not be able to satisfy the specific requirements. So what do you think the European Union needs to do in order to create these incentives?
Well, guarantees for purchases, long-term purchases programs, because anything that you do in defense, requires a couple of years to do, so you need to have purchase, orders, to procurement, and guarantees that this equipment will be bought. And from the banking point of view, whether for example, if you have the European Investment Bank and you have the defense-related investments now, and then you create this, do you increase the mandate of European Investment Bank to potentially, fund or finance the purchases? The question is, would the private banking sector follow the suit? Because in the past, you had exclusion for the private banking to finance arms purchases. So in fact, you have a complete change of paradigm to talk about more financing going to defense projects. So this is something that we need to think about, how to provide, first of all, the banking sector the guarantees, that would either for the national purchases of armaments, or to provide, for example, a special bank that was alluded by Mr. Sikorski, and a special purpose vehicles like EBRD, for example, or find a way to transform this whole industry. So it's both the transformation of ability to finance those new defense investment projects, at the same time to transform the industry. the whole idea behind, so is another third element would be to change this common defense policies. You have some instruments within the European treaties into the common defense. That's another thing that you may think about. And if you have this umbrella, common defense, not just a common defense policy, then you might put all the instruments on place to increase the capability of defense of the European Union and strengthening the industry, defense, European defense altogether.
Well, let's be honest. When looking at this situation, we can see that there is an immense complexity, including legal and fiscal complexity, that has to be overcome in order to achieve the desired results. Is the European Union always going to be one step behind countries such as Russia or China, where simply you have a defense minister calling the given factory and saying, increase the output of tanks by 100%, I don't care why, and they try to do that. And to some extent they might succeed, they might not, but they do not actually face so much red tape. And some skeptics say, well, this is a big disadvantage. We are, of course, democracies. We have procedures, but these procedures sometimes make it a bit more difficult to achieve the result that we want to see.
Well, in this, I would say, very complex governance structure of 27 member states, the things always go slower, because you need, for example, to increase, the ability to fund, to finance those investments. You need the approval of all the member states. For example, there's some money that is left still, and unspent money from recovery fund, maybe 300 billion euro in loans and grants. Question is, if you want to use it, then you need unanimous approval of all the member states. And 27 countries would go through the parliament to approve, and would take 2 years. So altogether, it's always a very complex situation. You don't have the union, you don't have the federal state that are responsible for defense, like in the United States or other countries that you mentioned, and you don't have, you have democracy. So democracy, we have to prove that even, although we have democratic rules and multi-level governance structures, we are able to fulfill the promise. We have, the ability to do that. We have the idea to do more financing for armaments. We have more fragmented industry. We have to consolidate the industry. We have to consider the demand. We have to consider the supply. This all will take time, of course, and unfortunately, we didn't think about it a couple of years ago. So we're in trouble today that we have to really very much speed up. But I think there is a momentum to do things faster than before. We'll see how it goes. One element, of course, is that Ukraine is also develop its own capabilities. And actually, an idea is also to provide more funding for development of these capabilities in defense. And I think the Ukraine, if we provide the money, first of all, that this is actually possible, and then we reinforce the cooperation with Ukrainian army. Then we are okay. But of course, it will take some time. Definitely, it's not for tomorrow.
Professor Paweł Wojciechowski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insight.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Milan Szerwiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.